Welcome back to the On the Ball podcast, another episode of the best potty going round, and we're back here again to discuss some more NRL football. A huge weekend of footy, obviously 2 semi-finals, both elimination games. So we're obviously going to touch on those. Also going to look ahead at this upcoming week, huge weekend, both prelims. Prelim weekend arguably better than the grand final weekend because you got 2 games, and they're arguably equal quality. And then something a bit more interesting. I've been wanting to do this for a while. It took me a little while to think about the amount of players I should choose. But the NFL, at the end of their season, they do like a top 100 players list. And I always find it really interesting. It's tough to compare position values and stuff like that. But I've had a crack at that for the NRL. I've done a top 20. Just did it then. Took me about half an hour. It was very hard. But I've eventually come to my decision. So stick with us to hear that. But before then, we'll be chatting about finals week 2. We started off with Manly Roosters. I'll be honest, wasn't that up and about for this one. I think after the huge roller coaster that was finals week 1, you obviously had the huge build up to Melbourne Manly. That was a fizzer. And then the Roosters, Titans, and South Penrith, they were brilliant games. Even Para Knights was a great game on the Sunday. So I feel like I was a little bit... I was emotionally drained at this point, but and before I could get into it, really, the score had already kind of gone. You just saw straight out of the gates that you can tell really quickly with Manly if they're on or not, and you could just tell straight away that they weren't losing this game. I didn't think they would. I obviously tipped Manly, was pretty confident on it. Didn't think this would be the scoreline. Didn't think the Roosters' defense would let them score 42 points, but Manly were just way too classy, had too many weapons for that Roosters defense, and the attack was just unreal. And the only team that I think is good enough to stop that attack is Melbourne, but that's another topic for another, well, not another day, but later on in the podcast. Just some stat lines. Turbo, obviously, probably best on the park yet again, absolute star. He had 2 tries, 200 meters, 3 line breaks, and 10 tackle breaks. And I talked about last week the amount of times he touches the ball. And obviously, it's a bit of a chicken or the egg thing. It's like, does he play well because he touches the ball more, or does he get the ball more when he plays well? I mentioned that he only had 20 touches of the ball in the game against Melbourne, nowhere to be seen. And here, I think he had 18 in the first half. So, he was right back around that regular season average. And even I just think for the rest of the final series, even if he's not as dominant as he has been all season, I just think you've got to get him the ball as much as you normally would, because I know you can argue that the more you give it to him, the less impactful he becomes. But I just think he's the heartbeat of that team, and he needs his hands on the footy. I thought Dylan Walker was really good off the bench. He's been really impressive this year. I'm not sure what his contract status is. I remember there was rumours of him coming to the Tigers. I know there's been rumours of every player under the sun coming to the Tigers. So I don't know if that means he's off contract or maybe he's only got 1 more year left or something like that. But he's been really impressive. And this new 14 role that's become the new vogue in the NRL of the last 2 years, that really suits him down to a T. And he's defending the middle is actually pretty handy. But the burst he provides up the middle, obviously he's not as big and powerful as a prop or anything, but just bring him on after 25 minutes. A quick, fast little guy in and around the big middles who are a bit fatigued after trying to stop the likes of Tommy and Josh Schuster and Olakuatu. It's just been working really well for Manly. On the Roosters side of things, Daniel Tupo had 220 metres with 70 post contact. As a big fan of the Bloke in a Bar podcast, Den Kemp loves Daniel Tupin, and I've been taking a bit more notice of him. And he is actually unreal. So he was awesome. And Warrior Hargraves had 157 metres. I thought he was really impressive as well. And Victor Radley made 56 tackles and had over 100 metres himself. So he was really, really good. For me, the big difference was the Roosters kicking game in that first half. It was obviously the tide was against them. Manly had all momentum, but the main sort of variable that can change stuff like that, obviously line breaks and penalties play a part, but I think the most controllable thing is the kicking game. Obviously, there's kick pressure and stuff, but line breaks and penalties, you need other people to, like, you need, obviously you can have a great play, but you need Manly to miss a tackle, or you need the ref to give you a penalty, or Manly to make a mistake to cause the penalty. Where the kicking game, apart from pressure, it's all you're doing. And yeah, I just thought the kicking game was really, really off in the first 30 minutes. And I know they're trying to protect Sam Walker, and you can argue that he shouldn't have even played first grade this year if it was Trent Robinson's dream situation. Obviously, he was rushed into it due to injuries, but part of me does think, like, if he's going to play at all, you may as well play him when the game's on the line at the start. And I know they probably weren't expecting to go down that quickly. But yeah, for me, that was the difference, because when he came on, the kicking definitely improved. But I understand it's a long-term strategy with Sam Walker, and I do respect that, because I think a lot of other coaches would just see this as a short-term, job business, and they would just be looking to get the best result on the night. Whereas Trent Robinson obviously cares for his players as people, and also he views his job and club, as a long-term project. So yeah, it was a disappointing way for the Roosters to end. Great season. I'll chat about it next week when I do the season reviews in the lead up to the grand final. But yeah, they're going to be really dangerous next year. I worked it out. They had like over 2 million in salary cap off the field on the weekend. So yeah, they're going to be a frightening force. And I reckon next year could be, well, obviously this year's interesting as well, but next year could be even spicier, because I think you'll throw Roosters right into that mix for the premiership. But yeah, Manly looking really good as they roll on. And then that put us into Saturday night, a completely different game. 8-6, Panthers got up. The stats were just inseparable in this one. I glanced over the team stats. The only real differences, I think Penrith had like 5 or so more offloads, which is quite interesting because you associate the offloads with the Eels, and also the penalty count favoured Penrith. I know there was a lot of chat about the penalty count. I don't really recall seeing any stinkers. I'm sure in the moment I might have thought, that was a bit stiff or something like that. But there weren't any that stuck out to me off the top of my head. Maybe I've just forgotten. But I don't think they were robbed. At the end of the day, I thought the Para try was pretty arsey. If Dylan Edwards catches that ball, even if he tries to catch it and knocks it on, I don't think Parramatta score, because I think Penrith's defence was that good and Eels' goal line attack was that poor. But yeah, Edwards had 229 metres, had a few issues under that high ball early, but yeah, his running game was incredible. He's someone who I've grown to appreciate a bit more in the last couple of weeks. I never thought he was that good of a player, and I always sort of thought Stephen Crichton was the better fullback in that club, and they just didn't really want to upset the apple cart. But yeah, Edwards has proven his worth. Isaiah Yeo was really, really good as well, had over 100 metres, and I thought Tavita Pangai, you saw why they got him, and you saw why there was such a kerfuffle over how they didn't rig it, but, they found a loophole in that salary cap, because, yeah, he adds another dimension to Penrith that sometimes, well, they don't lack, but with their current 17, it maybe isn't there as much. I feel like he replaces a lot of what Zane Tedavano brought to them last year, which was power and aggression off the bench. He had 137 metres in 32 minutes, which is a pretty ridiculous metre per minute ratio. So yeah, he was really impressive. On the Parramatta side of the ball, I thought Gutherson was awesome. I thought this was his best game in 2021. If I'm honest, I actually thought he had a down year. I think last year when Moses got injured and stuff, I think we saw how good Gutherson can be when he's given the license to do whatever he wanted. Like, he had to ball play, he had to kick and all that stuff. But this season, he's just been back to his fullback duties, and although he's been playing injured some of the season, I don't think he's played that well. I don't think he's added much creatively, and yeah, but this week he had 248 metres and he was just everywhere. Every kick that was getting diffused, whether it be 50 out or 10 out, he was there. And he's not as good, but when he plays games like this, he just really reminds me of Teddy, where everywhere you look, he's there. His work rate's just incredible. And yeah, Gutho was awesome. I thought Hayes Dunster was also really impressive. He had one of the few line breaks. I think there was only 3 in the game, but he provided one of them, had 200 metres. And yeah, he looks like a really exciting prospect. I'm not sure how young he is, but he looks like he could have a home on that wing for a while. all the power forwards were really, really good as usual. Interestingly, Nathan Brown only played 26 minutes. I don't remember a HIA or anything, so I don't know if there was an injury there. If it was tactical, let me know. I could have forgotten something, but yeah, if that was tactical, that's pretty interesting because he's one of, your big forwards. But the bench players played really well. Cartwright and Madison in particular came off the bench, and Papali'i. And then Ray Stone. I feel bad for Ray Stone. He copped a lot of praise last week and then one bad performance and he cops a lot of shit. But we've got to remember, guys, he is not a hooker. It's been well publicised on Twitter by Eels fans sticking up for him that he's the fourth hooker on the squad and he's not a hooker. Like, they've got 3 actual hookers and he was just the guy that they picked because there was no one left. So yeah, I know like every footballer should know how to pass the ball and he made some big blunders that might have cost them. I don't think that last one mattered. Like, they didn't look like scoring all game really in those situations, so I don't think they would have scored. But B, yeah, like I just think people need to lay off him really. He's a young bloke. I don't know if he's ever played hooker before, but he did really, really well in finals week 1 and probably was a huge reason why they won that game in defence. And yeah, he was really good in defence again, but a few wayward passes and everyone's like, clowning on him. I know it's funny to clown on Parramatta sometimes, but yeah, I thought picking on Ray Stone was a bit of a low blow, like, pick on some of the high hanging fruit, if you get what I mean. And that moves us into the power rankings. I don't think there's any headlines this week, really. Oh, the Dally M night 1 happened last night. I have to say, a bit of a farce. The Dally M is just so frustrating. It has so much potential, and they always, like, when you hear about it or read about it, you're like, oh, that's going to be good. But yeah, last night, like, it was absolute rubbish. So they just chatted to the 5 favourites for the Dally M, and like, I thought the whole purpose was to put all the awards on this night, and then they do like a Dally M count next week, like more like the AFL. But it seems like they're going to just be doing the exact same thing as they normally do. They've just split it into 2, and this was like a preview. But yeah, there's like awards like Headline of the Year and Fans Player of the Year. Like, I don't know why they didn't do that last time. I thought it would have been perfect. But yeah, anyways, NRL, very strange when it comes to the Dally M Awards. Any other news? No, I don't think so. So onto the power rankings. At the moment, you've got to have Storm number 1. Definitely the favourites to win the premiership from this point. That for that reason, I have Penrith in at 4th. I don't think they're the 4th best team in the comp, but I just think their chance of making it to the grand final is the lowest of the 4 teams remaining because they're playing the Storm, and for that reason, I've got to have them 4th. I just think, yeah, you've got to have a ticket to... Well, what's the saying? I always forget. You got to have a ticket to win the lottery or something. You got to buy a ticket. But yeah, for me, Penrith 4th because of that fact. And then 2 and 3, it's just a matter of who I think is going to win this week. I'm spoiling my tip here, but yeah, I think Manly will... I have Manly as the favourites going in against Souths. I know Souths beat Penrith and no one was expecting that one, but I just think... And I know Manly haven't played well against top 4 teams all year, so they could easily come out and fizz it up like round 1 of finals, but I just think they'll have too many points in them and the Rabbitohs won't be able to constrict them like they constricted Penrith, because we've seen after their performance against Para, Penrith's attack is not in great form. So I think with hindsight, I think that makes the Rabbitohs win a little bit less impressive to me. But let me know what you think down in the comments or on my Instagram. All right, finally, time for the top 20 NRL players. Yeah, this was really hard. I decided to rule out Roger Tuivasa-Sheck because I looked through the stats of this year and stuff like that. But yeah, I just thought, he's sort of like, I don't know if he's really an NRL player right now. So I've ruled him out. Just a little bit of context. The way I've viewed it is it's a tough one to do. It's not purely off this season, but this season's a huge influence. So the way I've done it is it's basically like you're doing a draft for a single season or like a single game or like a 5-game series, something like that. So you don't know anything about the team, who's in there. All you know is that this player is going to come to your club. You're not factoring in like marketing or business or anything like that. You're just factoring on-field performance. And yeah, so a lot of it is based on 2021, but we also can include injured players who didn't maybe play their best in 2021 and stuff like that. So Yeah, you sort of just got to humour me a little bit, but let me know what you think down in the comments and or DM me on Instagram whether you agree or not. Honourable mentions go to Isaiah Papali'i, incredible player this year, but for me, just didn't make the cut. Isaiah Yeo, Joey Manu, David Fafita, Mitchell Moses, Jai Arrow, Daniel Saifidi, Christian Welch, Jaden Campbell. I know that's a rogue, but I just think he's that good that I almost put him in there because I reckon by the end of next year he'll definitely be in there, but not enough games for me at the moment. And then Zach Lomax, who I think is the best centre in the game. All right, time for my top 20. Number 20, I've got Angus Crichton. And if I'm not there's sort of one other, but he's pretty much the only back rower in here. I just think, I love Angus Crichton, think he's a gun, think he's the best back rower. That's why I've picked him. But the reason there's only one back rower is I just think you can sort of find a working class, if you get what I mean, just a nut trucking, no frills back rower who will do a job for you and it will suffice. I think there's other positions that are more important to fill. So yeah, I've got Angus Crichton as the number one back row, and he's the only one in this list. So yeah, Angus Crichton, number 20, huge gun. We've seen it on Origin. In Origin, we've seen it for the Roosters. We've seen it for the Rabbitohs. Absolute beast. Number 19, definitely not his best year, but Jason Tamalolo, I just still think on his day, he can be the best middle forward in the game. I don't have him as the highest middle forward, quite far from it, actually. But yeah, I just think what he's done in the game, and we know, there's a few people who've had great careers and they're not good right now, so I'm not going to include them. But for me, with Tamalolo, he could easily come out next week or after a bad game, he could easily come out and run 180 meters. It's just a bit of a form slump. Number 18, I've got Ryan Papenhuyzen. You could say it's a bit low. I think a lot of people would have him top 10. I know we were talking about whether he's better than Teddy at the start of the year, but for me, if you take him out of the Storm and just put him into an average team, which is what we're pretending for this situation, I think he would be a very good player and he'd be very explosive, but I don't think he would single-handedly win you games like some of the other fullbacks. I just think he's very good at everything, and that's why he's in the top 20 players in the game. But yeah, for me, he's just not as good as some of the other fullbacks. And I just think he benefits from being in the Melbourne team that's got a lot of ball players, and he can sort of just stick to being an explosive runner. But yeah, Papenhuyzen's a gun. Number 17, Luke Kiri. Yes, he's pretty much missed all of this year and part of last year, but I still think when he's in full swing, he's one of the best 5'8" in the game, or halves, whichever position he plays. If I had my choice, I'd probably have him higher, but I just thought that, because he's been injured, I maybe should put him a bit lower. But yeah, Luke Kiri, absolute gun. Really excited to see him back next year, to be honest. Partnering Sam Walker, that'll be really interesting to watch how that dynamic works. Number 16, I've got my first prop. I guess if Tamalolo's a lock, I've got my first prop of the list, Adam Fanue-Blake. Controversial, probably. I don't think he would be in many of people's top 20, but I think he's an absolute beast. And for me, like I said with Tamalolo, on his day, he can be the best prop. I know, he was good for the Warriors, really good, but I don't think he really had a game where he was at his damaging best, where we saw for Manly, he single-handedly won them a couple games in the middle. Number 15, Kalen Ponga. This guy's probably taken a bit of a decrease from last year, but I still think on his day, he's a gun. We saw it last weekend in the first finals week that he put on an absolute show. We've seen it in Origins. He's a big game player. I just want more hands on the footy from him. But, if we're drafting a team, he's probably going to be your number one pick. So, your first round pick. So, you're going to be giving him the nut. But yeah, Kalen Ponga, absolute superstar of our game. Number 14, Jerome Hughes. I find the Storm ones hard to judge because it's hard to know if it's the system or if it's them as a player. I guess Nico Hines will be the perfect case for this when he goes to the Sharkies next year. But yeah, Jerome Hughes, for me, he's the third best halfback in the game. I'll reveal the next two later. In their current setups, I'd say he's the second most effective half. But if you take them out, put them into an average team, for me, he's the number 3. absolute gun. Not your classic halfback who just, passes and directs the team around. He's got a brilliant running game. But yeah, his kicking game and stuff like that's gone to another level this year. I love Jerome Hughes. Cody Walker in at number 13. I've got mixed opinions on Cody Walker, but I thought he played pretty well in finals week 1. I thought that was his best big game performance. He's not necessarily a big game player, but I think what he does in the regular season, week in, week out, is pretty unlike any other 5'8". So, I think he's... Oh, there's one more. There's one more 5'8", but for me, he's right up there with the best 5'8" in the game. We've seen him break the try assist and line break assist record this year. Incredible creative powerhouse. It's going to be interesting to see how he goes next year without Adam Reynolds next to him. I think that's where we'll get a real judge for both of them, really, how well they are, how good they are. But yeah, Cody Walker, absolute gun. Next, this is controversial because I don't think people would have him in the top echelons of his position, let alone the top 20, but I absolutely love this bloke, and I think if you go and watch that finals week 1 performance, you'll see why. Tino Fasua Malaawi. Sorry if I butchered that last name, but big Tino. I absolutely love Tino. I can't believe Melbourne let him go, but I've never seen anyone put in more effort, I don't think, at his size. He plays all game. He can almost play 80 minutes. I think he played about 65 in that Titans-Roosters game. But, yeah, he'll make 40, 50 tackles for you, throwing his big body around. He'll chase down little guys, and then all of that combined with the explosive running game, a big, tall guy. He can ball play as well. I just think Tino Fasua is awesome. And, yes, it's probably debatable having him above, Jason Tamalolo, but... yeah, I love him that much. Number 11, never thought I'd have a winger in the top 20, but I do. And that's Brian Toto. I think the Panthers really missed him on the weekend. And for me, people will probably argue, why would you pick a winger first in your team? But for me, Toto is pretty much a prop. He just does his work at the start of the set and set at the end. As we know, he's averaged over 200 running meters a game, broken all sorts of records in terms of that stuff. And yeah, he's just an absolute beast. His post-contact meters are insane. And yeah, I love Brian Toto. I know there's questions over his height and stuff like that, but yeah, I just think what he can provide, he's a brilliant finisher, and what he does at the start of sets, I just think any team would take that in an absolute heartbeat, and I would love that in my side. Number 10, I've got Cameron Murray. Similar to Tino, people probably wouldn't have him because you don't, when you think of gun players, explosive players, you don't think of Cameron Murray. He's rarely making line breaks and stuff like that, but he's the perfect ball-playing lock. He can play back row, can also just play front row, but he's a tackling machine, one of the best tackle techniques in the competition. Absolute workhorse, gives 110% every week, and he'll run his ass off into the opposition middle. So yeah, for me, Cameron Murray, I love him in the top 10. Number 9, I've got the Cheese. He was a tough one to rank. But for me, I just thought of it, you're getting one of the best middle forwards in the game, plus someone who can be a top 5 hooker in the competition. So, for me, even though he's probably benefits from the Storm, but yeah, he's a try-scoring threat. He's a brilliant service provider from hooker. He's a great tackler, and he's a gut runner when he plays in the middle. So for me, the Cheese is number 9. Number 8, I've gone with DC. He's my second halfback. As I mentioned before, I'd have Hughes above him if we compared them in their systems. But if we took them out, put them into a neutral team, I would have DC above Hughes. I just think the way he can control a match, I've seen it on multiple occasions, but I remember one, I think it was 2019 against the Tigers. He just kicked us out of the game. He just kept us in a corner. And I don't think anyone utilizes their kicking game as Cherry Evans does. He genuinely just tries to pin you down. He doesn't try and force errors with spiral bombs or stuff like that. He'll just try and kick for corners and get field position, which is what you always want to do as a kicker. And he's also really fast. He's got a great running game, which we all know, but sometimes it can be forgotten as halfbacks traditionally haven't been expected to do that. Number 7, I've got with Harry Grant. I know it's weird because he's a bench player at the moment, but I still think this guy's the best hooker in the competition. I think we saw it in last year's Origin series. We saw it at the Tigers. We've seen it in bursts with the Storm this year. And yeah, I just reckon he could be a gun 80-minute hooker at any club. Anyone would take him. Brilliant tackler, workhorse like Cameron Murray and Tino Fasuamaleaui, but also like a line break threat, line break assist threat. I just think Harry Grant's the ultimate hooker. Latrell Mitchell's number 6. Tough one to rank as well because there's a lot of good fullbacks, but I just think the explosive power he brings to that position is unrivaled at the moment. Those out the back balls that the 5'8" gives. If you give him the ball in that sort of sweeping play, 5 or 10 out, really hard to stop. And I think like any team would take him. He can obviously play center as well. Absolute beast there. The best at his trade in that position. But yeah, fullback does a great job. Good ball player at the back. But yeah, just explosive runner. And I love that about him. Number 5, I've gone with Payne Haas. I don't know if it's controversial, but having a prop in your top 5, maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but I just think Payne Haas is a step above the rest of the forwards in the competition. You know, we've mentioned Brandon Smith, we've mentioned Cameron Murray, Tino, Tamalolo, Fanue, Blake, but I think the consistency and high quality, like I think he brings a level of consistency that some of those other guys don't, like Tamalolo and Fanue, Blake, and he does it at a raised level. So he can almost play 80 minutes a week. You'll tackle 40 tackles a game and he'll give you 180 running meters. I just think we haven't seen the best of him yet because he's not been playing in a successful team. But I think once the Brisbane Broncos get going, I think the spotlight will be shined on how good this kid is. And yeah, to think he's only like 22 or 21, like crazy. Number 4, I've got Cameron Munster. Certainly not his most dominant home and away season, but for me, he's the best big game player in the competition. If we were drafting for a single game, he would arguably be my number 1 pick. Like, I just think he's that good in the big situations. Grand finals, origins, he always tears it up. And yes, he's probably less consistent than the top 3, and I think that's what has limited him in this order. But yeah, absolute freak, one of the most creative players. I think he is the most creative player in the comp. And yeah, absolute gun. Number 3, I've got James Tedesco. Not my top 3 is probably pretty dull. It's probably a given, but yeah, Teddy in a number 3. I just think there's no other player like him who will just give you a 9 out of 10 every week at fullback with the odd 10 out of 10. We saw him in 2019 and 2020 absolutely tear the sport up, and people probably think he's fallen off a cliff since then, but that's not true at all. His team's just not been as successful, so you haven't seen him been scoring tries and stuff like that as much. But yeah, he's still every bit as good as he was. His defensive work is unrivaled for me at the position, and yeah, just an absolute gun. Like, I love Teddy so much. I think he's so good. Well, everyone does, but I just want to get around him. Then number 2, this was a tough one, bit of a 50-50 like the Dally M this year, but just because of his consistency and his track record and his maybe position has a bit more value, I've gone with Nathan Cleary 1, Turbo 2. I just think Turbo's a gun, but if we're looking at it, say if we're drafting for the 2022 one, he's more injury prone. He's dominated, but he's only really dominated for 18 months, where Cleary's been really, really good for 3 or 4 years now. And Cleary's elevated his game. I don't want to bag out Tom. Like, I don't want to compare them in that sense. They're both freaks of nature, and they're the 1 and 2 players in the comp for my liking. But yeah, that's why I've gone with Ples number 1. But yeah, Turbo, don't really need to say much, do I? Probably the best individual season of all time this year. His team was basically coming last, and then he joined them and they became a top 4 powerhouse. So that basically says enough. And then number 1, Nathan Cleary hasn't lost a regular season NRL game since, I think, round 10 in 2020. That says enough. There's some question marks over his big game performances, but I think in this year's season in Origin and big Penrith games, I think he's sort of proved the doubters wrong. I think he's gone to a new level. He's a genuine try-scoring threat these days. His kicking game's unrivaled. And yeah, I just think Nathan Cleary is the best player in the sport. And if I had to draft someone, he would be my number 1 pick. So let me know what you thought of that list. It was really hard. It's really hard to like compare the positions. I would happily do a top 20 halfbacks, fullbacks, etc. But when you actually compare them across, like it's hard to compare a centre to a fullback because the seventh best fullback might be better than the best centre. So yeah, that was a tough one, but hopefully you enjoyed that list. Let me know if I've forgotten any. Some of the big absentees from last year's list, maybe. Damian Cook didn't even go close for me. I just think he's been really pretty average for a couple of years now. Like, he's not bad at all. He's still a top half hooker, but I think the likes of Harry Grant, Brandon Smith, even Coruscant, I think they've sort of taken the position to a new level, and Cook hasn't really gone with them in terms of his consistency. Wade Graham was one I was unsure of. We've hardly seen him this year, but on his day, he could be the best back row on the comp. Now there's questions about whether whether he's past his prime and stuff like that. But yeah, Reid Marnie was another tough one, I thought. And the Jerome Luai, missed him out. And Josh Papali'i, he was probably like top 10 last year, and he's not even made the cut this year. So yeah, that was maybe a bit stiff, but I just think his year was really disappointing. I know I said that about Tamalolo, but I think it's different stories there. But yeah, let me know what your top 20 would be, or if you would make any changes to mine. Now, looking ahead at the prelim finals this weekend, what an unreal weekend of footy. I'll preface this. Friday night, Rabbitohs Seagulls. Saturday, Arvo, Melbourne, Penrith. Saturday night, AFL Grand Final. And then roll into the Premier League at 9:30, top of the table clash, Man City, Chelsea. I don't know if all of you like all three of those sports, but for someone like me, that's a pretty good day and about as good as it gets in lockdown. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Definitely need to clear my schedule so I can just strap myself in on Saturday and not move from the couch. But NRL, Rabbitohs Seagulls Friday night in Brisbane at Suncorp Stadium. South's going in as the bookies' favourite at $1.77, Manly $2.05. The line is 1.5 points in South's direction, so the line's really that short. It's not really much point taking it unless you're trying to get a bit more value on South. And for me, the teams haven't come out, by the way. I'm doing this Tuesday morning, but yeah, I've got Manly in this one. I know South are the favourite. I know they've had the week off. I know Wayne Bennett's the superior coach. I know they just beat the better team in Penrith, but for me, Manly, I can't tip against Manly. I probably would tip Manly against everyone except for the Storm, obviously, and maybe Penrith, because I think Penrith's defense is that good that they could maybe they could maybe contain them. But their attack's not great at the moment. But anyway, that's another discussion. But yeah, for me, Manly, I just think, I don't know if the Rabbitohs attack is playing that well at the moment. They haven't played that many games together. They didn't play the last round because they rested. They played on week one of the finals, and what did they score? Like 14 points, 2 tries, I think it was, maybe. And they had another week off last week, so they haven't really had much time without Latrell. And for me, that concerns me. Manly's defense isn't outrageous, but however, they did hold the Roosters to 6 points. So, yeah, for me, Manly will score too many points that the Rabbitohs won't be able to keep up. I don't think they score 42. My prediction would maybe be 22-10. I think it will be fairly low scoring. Hopefully it's a shootout. That would be sick, seeing these two teams in full flight like we have throughout the regular season. But yeah, I think South will play a pretty conservative game like they did against Penrith. And for me, Manly will just make too many line breaks. And I don't see South scoring more than 3 tries, and I don't see Manly scoring less, if you get me. So yeah, that'll be interesting though, because South are defending really well right now. So I'll go Manly 22-10 there. Melbourne versus Penrith, as I mentioned, Saturday afternoon at Suncorp. Melbourne $1.35, which is outrageous for a prelim final, but they're that good. Panthers are $3.25, which if you got told that in round 10, you'd probably take the person's hand off. But the line's 8.5 in Melbourne's favour. Pretty big for a prelim final, 8.5. Oh, this is a tough one because the Panthers just can't score right now. They've scored 8 points against Para, and they scored like 10 points against South. So it's really hard to see where the points come from against Melbourne. Melbourne do play a bit more of an expansive style than, the Para Eels, so maybe there's more chance. But I just think Melbourne are that well drilled. I obviously can't tip against Melbourne. They're too good, but I'm just thinking about the margin. Let me know what you would go with the comments. All right, I'm just going to lock this in. I think Panthers' defense is really good, better than Manly. So I'm going to say Melbourne score less than week 1, which isn't hard because they did score a lot. I'm going to say Melbourne. I'm tempted to go the same scoreline, actually. No, I'll go Melbourne 24. I'll go Melbourne 24, Panthers 4. I just don't see Panthers scoring many tries. Actually, I'll give them 6, maybe a penalty goal in there, or then maybe they convert the try. So yeah, I'll go 24-6. So very similar score lines, but yeah, so I guess I'm taking Melbourne at the line. I actually was thinking maybe Penrith at the line, but yep. So 24-6 in Melbourne Penrith, 22-10 Rabbitohs Seagulls. They're my bets, my tips, sorry. Let me know what you're going with down in the comments, whether it be who you're going for, what you're betting, what you're tipping. Let me know. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. But yeah, huge weekend of sport and rugby league in particular. So pumped for it. I think the Super League finals actually start on Thursday as well. Probably should have brought you a preview, but not everyone who watches NRL watches Super League. But yeah, if I can give you any advice, check that out. I think it's a different final system, very different. So I think there's games on when maybe it starts tomorrow. It's like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday or something. There's just one each night, and then they have a break for a weekend. And it's like Thursday, Friday, and then the grand final. But yeah, you're not probably going to be able to watch it unless you sleep weird hours. I think it's like going to be 5:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, I'll probably be watching the replays when I wake up at about 8. But I'm really excited for those ones to see just all the teams roll out. It's actually a really good final series. There's a great top 4 at the moment, and some of the lower teams are in great form. You got the likes of Leeds and Wigan coming in off good wins on the weekend, and then you've obviously got Catalan, Warrington, and St. Helens, who have been unreal all season. But I won't rant to you about the Super League. Go check that out if you want. But yeah, super keen for the NRL. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.